Modern fiberglass hulls are designed to delaminate. I can prove it with one number the industry hopes you never see. A 1974 Pearson 323 tapped the hull and it rings like stone. An inch-thick solid glass. No core, no compromise. Now, a 2016 production 34-foot boat. Spongy decks, delaminated stringer bonds, blistering below the waterline on a boat barely old enough to finance. Here is what does not add up. The stronger resin costs $3.91 per square foot. The weaker resin they actually use costs $7.50 per square foot. They are paying more to build a hull that fails. Lay your palm flat against the hull of a Pearson from the 1970s and the surface feels cold, dense, almost indifferent to your touch. The gelcoat is just a thin shell over a wall of solid fiberglass. No give, no echo, just a muted resistance. Tap it with a knuckle, and the sound is unmistakable. A deep, ringing note that travels through an inch of hand-laid glass, woven roving stacked thick enough to dull any vibration. It is the sound of mass, of a hull built to shrug off decades of strain, water, and neglect. There is nothing accidental about that weight. Hull schedules from the era list layers of cloth and mat, each one hand-wet and rolled, building up a barrier nearly as thick as a butcher's block. No core, no sandwich, no shortcuts, just glass and resin, stacked until the hull could outlive its owner. Now, move to a modern production cruiser, built 40 years later. The first thing you notice is not a sound, but a feeling. The hull flexes under pressure from your thumb. The deck compresses ever so slightly beneath a heel. Tap the skin and the vibration is sharp, almost hollow, a quick plastic note that dies in the foam core. The outer layer is thin, maybe 2 millimeters of glass, then a sandwich of lightweight foam, then another wafer of glass inside. What used to be a fortress is now a shell, engineered for weight savings and ease of assembly. The difference is not subtle. A drum test on a 2016 model yields scattered, uneven tones. Some panels ring, others thud, and a few simply buzz, betraying voids or bonds that never fully cured. People say the old hulls were overbuilt, as if that is a flaw. But there is a reason those boats still pass survey, still cross oceans, still sell for real money after 40 years. The new hulls, by contrast, can feel like they are holding together out of habit. The tactile difference is the first warning. The sound is the second. Something in the structure has changed, and you do not need a spreadsheet to sense it. The numbers are coming, and when you see them, the feeling in your hand will finally make sense. Here are the numbers they hoped you'd never see. Start with the resin math. The market is supposed to believe that polyester is the cheap way out, but the actual cost sheets tell a different story. For a square foot of hull, epoxy resin with woven glass clocks in at $3.91 per square foot. The so-called budget option, polyester with chopped strand mat, lands at $7.50 per square foot. That is not an outlier. It is a documented inversion, and it means builders are paying more to get less strength, less durability, and a shorter hull lifespan. Now take the labor that is supposed to keep these shortcuts in check. A dedicated quality control supervisor, someone who inspects every hull for voids, dry layup, and missed bonds, costs about $1,000 per boat. That is the gap. Skip that line item, and you pocket the difference. The result is a hull that leaves the factory with hidden defects baked in. Defects that will surface always, but never under warranty. Material science does not care about marketing. Polyester resin stretches to failure at about 1 to 2% elongation. Epoxy reaches 3.5 to 4.5% before it cracks. In practical terms, that is the difference between a hull that flexes and recovers, and a hull that micro-cracks under the stress of a single hard grounding. Every percentage point is a margin that has been erased by choice, not by accident. Osmotic blistering is a numbers game too. When water gets past the gel coat, pressure inside a blister can reach 200 psi. That is enough to pry apart a thin laminate, especially when the skin is barely 2 millimeters thick. The industry's own manuals confirm these thresholds. The risk is not theoretical. It is measurable, repeatable, and ignored by design. Then there is the timeline. Lenders and insurers quietly cap their risk at 15 to 20 years for most modern production hulls. That is not a coincidence. It is an actuarial echo of the engineered failure window, the moment when the cost savings come due and the next owner inherits the bill. These numbers are not opinions. They are the ledger entries of a business model that trades structural integrity for short-term margin. The math is right there, and it is not on your side. The numbers first shift in the resin. Polyester, long, favored for its speed and low upfront cost, now costs more per square foot than a thinner, stronger epoxy layup. Builders pay $7.50 per square foot for polyester and chopped strand mat, compared to $3.91 for epoxy and woven glass. The choice is not about savings. It is about fitting production lines and marketing, not long-term cost. The technical cost appears in interlaminar shear strength, also called ILSS. Polyester resin shears at about 15 megapascals, just enough for a hull that will flex and slam for decades. Epoxy resists up to 25 megapascals. The difference is stark. Polyester glass coupons fail at 1 to 2% elongation, while epoxy stretches to 4%. That margin is the line between a hull that cracks in a storm and one that survives. Layup thickness tells the next part of the story. Older hulls stacked up to an inch of glass, 6 or more layers of woven roving and mat. Modern hulls often have just 2 millimeters of glass on the outer skin before the core. That is thinner than a credit card. The core, foam or balsa, adds stiffness but brings new risks. Closed cell foam absorbs less than 2% water by volume, but a single breach or missed bond can turn it into a sponge. Water migrates along the bond line, delaminating the skin from the core with every freeze-thaw or pressure cycle. Balsa fares worse. Once wet, it never truly dries, and rot spreads unseen, often escaping notice until the hull is compromised. Each decision, resin, layup, core, trades durability for convenience. The numbers are clear. Every shortcut compounds the next vulnerability, and the owner inherits the consequences: rising repair bills, lost value, and sometimes the slow decline of a boat built to last but engineered to fail. Barrier coat disappears from the build list with a single line that says omit epoxy barrier except at structural joints. On paper, it is a minor omission. In practice, it leaves the hull exposed, just gel coat and hope between the ocean and the core. Polyester resin breathes water vapor. Epoxy blocks it. Skip the barrier, and every scratch or pinhole becomes an entry point. The savings are immediate, a few hours and a few $100s per hull. The damage arrives years later in blisters and swelling that no warranty will touch. Quality control is the next shortcut, buried in the numbers. A factory can hire a dedicated inspector for about $1,000 per boat, one person to check every bond, every tab, every core for dry spots and voids. The math is simple. Most hidden defects could be caught, but that line is easy to cut. The savings show up on the balance sheet. The failures show up in the field: dry layups, missed bonds, cores that never fully adhere. These are not rare mistakes. They are the predictable result of skipping the only step that could have stopped them. Grid bonding reveals the logic. Builders save the epoxy for one place, the bulkhead tabs. Everywhere else, polyester resin holds the structure together. The proof is physical. Cut open a hull and the bulkhead tabs stand out. Different color, different sheen. Epoxy, labeled and logged, bonds the visible joint. The rest relies on the cheaper resin, out of sight. One retired owner learned the cost. He paid extra for a blue water package, trusting the promise of offshore strength. 5 years later, blisters spread across the hull. The surveyor AES hammer mapped delamination along the grid lines where the barrier coat was omitted. Insurance refused the claim. The builder pointed to the fine print. His retirement plan dissolved in the cost of repairs. These are not isolated errors. They are choices made by people who know exactly what they are doing. The evidence is in the resin, in the skip steps, in the places where the right material appears only where it is visible. Moisture meters and survey hammers promise peace of mind, but the reality beneath a modern hull is far less reassuring. The tools most buyers rely on are blind to the failures that matter. A moisture meter reads surface conductivity, a few millimeters deep at best, while waterlogged balsa or foam can hide inches below, sealed off by a thin skin that reads dry. Surveyors know the limits. A deck or hull can pass inspection with a perfect meter reading, even as water migrates along a failed bond line and delaminates the skin from the core out of sight. False negatives aren't rare. Field reports and technical bulletins document cases where moisture meters gave the all clear, only for a core sample to reveal rot or a void spreading like a bruise beneath the laminate. The underlying physics is simple. Water travels along the weakest plane, often the glue line between core and skin, and unless the skin is breached or the core is exposed, the meter sees nothing. Even advanced ultrasonic gauges can struggle to resolve a delamination, unless the void is large and continuous. Small, isolated failures, the kind that start the chain reaction, go undetected until the damage is irreversible. David Pascoe's critique of moisture meters is blunt. They offer a false sense of security, especially on cored hulls built to a price. The high rate of missed failures is not a quirk. It is a technical limitation. Owners who trust the survey alone are gambling with thousands of dollars. The real risk is invisible, and by the time the symptoms appear, soft spots, blisters, or a hollow thud, the financial fallout is already set in motion. A hull's journey does not end at launch. Ownership shifts from the first buyer, often a young family eager for adventure, to a second buyer who might stretch finances for a loan or new insurance. By the time a third owner steps aboard, usually someone nearing retirement, the rules have already changed. Lenders and insurers track hull age with precision. Most production boats built after 2000 hit a wall at 15 to 20 years. Loans become harder to secure. Insurance terms shrink and premiums jump. Some carriers will not even quote. These are not arbitrary decisions. Actuarial data shows risk climbing steeply as hidden flaws, blistering, core rot, and delamination emerge just as warranties expire. In the used market, the pattern is clear. Over 3,400 production sailboats, most between 9 and 15 years old, fill the listings. This is not just turnover, it is owners racing to sell before the next survey or renewal. In Florida, Texas, and Louisiana, insurers have quietly raised premiums by up to 28% for boats in this age band, citing a rise in claims. Lenders now cap loans at 15 years, survey results be damned. The result is a steady transfer of risk, from builder to first owner, then to the next, and finally to the retiree, hoping for one last voyage. By then, repair bills are uninsurable, resale value collapses, and the financial hit lands on those least able to absorb it. This is not about neglect. It is a system built to shift costs downstream, where the illusion of a bargain vanishes and the last owner shoulders the real price. Accountants don't use hammers or meters. They use spreadsheets. The real decisions get made in quiet offices, not on the shop floor. Every shortcut in a production hull starts as a row in a ledger, weighed against the cost of warranty claims in the window when liability disappears. The numbers are blunt. A dedicated quality control supervisor, someone who could catch dry layups and voids before the hull leaves the mold, costs $1,000 per boat. That line is easy to strike. Multiply it by a production run of 200 hulls, and the savings hit six figures, all booked before the first owner ever steps aboard. The logic runs deeper. Builders know the probability curve. Most serious delamination and core failures don't appear until year 7, year 10, or year 12, just after the warranty expires, and just before lenders and insurers start tightening their terms. Failures that show up in year 15 are someone else's problem. The cost of catching those defects before launch is real, but the cost of letting them pass is deferred, often for a decade or more. That's how the business stays solvent. The ledger tracks every omitted barrier coat, every skipped inspection, every resin downgrade. The savings are immediate, predictable, and scalable. The risk is distributed, first to the buyer, then to the next owner, and finally to the retiree, with a survey in hand and no recourse. This is not accidental. It's a decay curve plotted to fall just outside the warranty window, engineered by people who know exactly how long their product needs to hold together. The numbers don't lie. They just wait. They called it a flaw, overbuilt and overweight, too much glass for the job. The term became a punchline, shorthand for boats that were supposedly stuck in the past. But after 4 decades, those same hulls refused to die. The thickness that once drew ridicule is the only reason these boats still float, still pass survey, still command a premium from buyers who know what they are looking at. Every extra layer, every ounce of glass was a margin of safety, put there by builders who understood that the ocean does not care about marketing or quarterly earnings. The so-called excess was not waste, it was insurance, paid up front, in glass and resin, instead of in survey bills and failed insurance claims years down the line. The hulls that survived from the 1970s and the 1980s were built with a margin that has vanished from modern production. That margin is not theoretical. It is measured in millimeters of laminate, in pounds per square foot, in the deep, solid ring you feel under your hand. It is the only reason a 40-year-old Pearson or Cape Dory can shrug off a grounding, dry out after a leak, or take a second owner across blue water without flinching. The industry spent years convincing buyers that overbuilt boats were relics, heavy, inefficient, unsophisticated, but the evidence is in the water. The last honest fiberglass hulls are the ones that refused to cut corners, that carried an extra 1/8 of an inch just in case. The difference between a boat that is still alive at 40 and one that fails at 15 is measured in those lost margins. Overbuilt was never a flaw. It was the last act of honesty in a business that has since learned how to hide the cost of failure where no one can see it. Silence. This isn't accidental obsolescence. It's materials science turned against its own. For $1,000 less in quality control, and for the $3.91 resin swap, a hull's fate is sealed before launch. Banks now cap loans at 15 years because they know the clock is ticking. Overbuilt was never a mistake. It was a promise. Today, the real fraud isn't hidden in the laminate. It's in pretending the math doesn't matter.